scared, you want me weak, you want me brain dead and asleep. You want us trapped while you all laugh behind the scenes. You want us sick, you think we're dumb. You want us blind and you want us drugged. You want us poor while you get more of everything. But you don't get to tell me what to think and what to do. No, you don't get to tell me what is true. 'Cause you're just liars, cheats and crooks. Change the rules and you burn the books. And so I don't believe a single word you say. You're all liars, fakes and cons. Want you out and we want you gone. So don't believe this time you'll get away. You want us tricked, you want us numb. You want us scared and you want us stung. You want us shot and you want us fought in every way. You want our minds, you want our time. You want us framed up in your crime. I hope you know that it's time to go and we're taking names. 'Cause you don't get to tell us what to think and what to do. No, you don't get to tell us what is true. 'Cause you're just liars, cheats and crooks. Change the rules and you burn the books. And so we don't believe a single word you say. You're all liars, fakes and cons. Want you out and we want you gone. So don't believe this time you'll get away. 'Cause we see la 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 all your lies. La 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 all your lies. You don't get to tell us what to think and what to do. You don't get to tell us what to think and what to do. You don't get to tell us what to think and what to do. You're just liars, cheats and crooks. Change the rules and you burn the books. And so we don't believe
somebody made this song out of thin air.
You're all liars, fakes and cons. Want you out and we want you gone. So don't believe this time you'll get away. 'Cause we see la 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 all your lies. La 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 all your lies. 'Cause you're just liars, cheats and crooks.
5 times August. All right, we'll put it on pause now. It's an amazing song, 5 times August, who has authorized me to now make this the formal intro song of the Viva Frei podcast. Good afternoon, everybody. I shot another episode of The Unusual Suspects. I think it might be the longest episode we've ever recorded, and it's airing live, premiering at 6 o'clock tonight. Go check it out, people. I did not get to go to a store to get a new computer, which I'm probably going to try to do after this. I have to go to a shopping center. I hate shopping centers. But we start off with the good, and then we get to the bad, and then we do a little ad read, and then we bring in our guest, and it's going to be amazing. Share the link around. If you don't know who David Krayden is, not Krayden, I have been corrected. That's good because, you know, I make fun of that guy named John Cryer because his last name is Cryer and all he does on Twitter is cry. Krayden, amazing post-millennial journalist covering a lot of stuff in Canada. We're going to start with the good, then we're going to get to the bad and the ugly, or I guess it's going to be the bad and the ugly on the far right, and the meanness towards Tulsi Gabbard. Guys, I feel that I need to periodically remind everyone as to what scumbags and scoundrels we are dealing with in government. The people crying about Trump's cabinet picks are the most disgusting people on earth, and that's how you know they're doing something right with the Trump administration. Pissing off the worst people on earth means you're doing it right. Listen to this. Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And if that awful-looking swamp creature on the right looks familiar, I'll remind you why in a sec.
Tulsi Gabbard is someone who has met with war criminals, violated the Department of State's guidance, and secretly, clandestinely went to Syria and met with Assad, who gassed and attacked his own people with chemical weapons.
I think that's thoroughly been proven to have been a false flag, but set that aside. And by the way, when you hear the word filthy slob, a slob, Wasserman Schultz is a slob. Everything about her is slob. Like, I look more haggard than she does, and I'm not a slob. The drooling slob is what she is.
She's considered to be essentially by most assessments a Russian asset, and would be the most.
Is that how you consider her? Is that what you?
Oh
consider her?
yeah. Of
Oh
course.
yes.
Oh yes.
There's
Russia.
no question.
No
I consider
question.
her someone who is likely a Russian asset.
Likely a Russian asset. They benefit from immunity, so these jackass slobs get away with what they're saying.
Be as the DNI responsible for managing our entire intelligence community, hold all of our most significant intelligence information and secrets, and essentially would be a direct line to our enemies. And so
awful slob is the only word I can think of.
The irresponsibility of these appointments.
Go after them. Debbie Wasserman Schultz. You may remember her from such scandals as screwing Bernie Sanders in the primaries in 2016, hiring 2 spies. I forget the Arwan brothers scandal there. Scum of the earth, slob, lying filth is what they are. I'm trying to start verbal vomit again and again. Yeah, Russia. Tulsi Gabbard, a Russian asset. Holy crab apples. The only one. Okay, it doesn't matter. Just wanted to remind everybody, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, when you see her face, she's a scoundrel scumbag, just like Donna Brazil. All cheaters, all liars, and these are the lying, cheating slobs who are going to tell you that Tulsi Gabbard, an honorable member of government, is a Russian asset. Awful. All right, speaking of slobs and not turning into one, people, or if you are, when there's nothing, get out of it. Every day is the next day of your life. Lumen, people. You're going to go to the website if you're going to check this out after. And what is Lumen? You might be asking people. It's the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning carbs, fats. It gives you a tailored guidance for what you should eat throughout the day, when you should work out, how your sleeps are working, and it even works for stress management. All you have to do is breathe into the Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fats or mostly carbs. Then Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for the day based on your measurements. You can also breathe into it before and after workouts to see exactly what's going on with your body in real time. It's quite amazing. And it works. I mean, it's very cool what it tells you about your own body. I have one. I use it. I'm also just wickedly neurotic and I exercise anyhow. So it's very cool. It tells me what I'm burning and I try to avoid carbs regardless. So by the way, it's amazing. Why is your metabolism important? I think you all know it. It's your body's engine. It shows you how your body's turning food into energy. Your metabolism is at the center of everything your body does. Optimal metabolic health translates into benefits such as weight management, energy levels, better fitness results, better sleep. Lumen gives you recommendations for maximizing your metabolic health. Go over to lumen.me/Viva, LUMEN.me, and I'll just impress you. Lima, Uniform, Mama, Echo, November.me/Viva. Get 15% off your Lumen. Click the link below. It is in the description. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode where we're going to go from body health to total corruption. If you don't know, you might not appreciate why this is important. This is going to be a very Canada-centric stream. David Krayden, for goodness sake, he's laughing. He pointed at me in the back. Krayden is doing amazing work up in Canada. Why is it important? It might not be too long before Canada is a national security threat to America. Chinese infiltration. There's a row, what they call a row, a diplomatic row now with India, because there might be Indian Khalistani terrorist-connected individuals on Canadian soil. It's wild. I've been following it, as we say in Quebec, en diagonale, briefly, summarily. We're going to get into the thick of it. Dave, you ready? 3, 2, 1. Let's bring him in. Sir, hold on a second. I'm going to bring it out just so we can see your beautiful backdrop. Is that a hat or that's your microphone?
That's my microphone.
Okay. Yeah, I thought it was like the Canadian equivalent of the MAGA hat. Now I'm going to bring you back in here. Sir, how are you doing?
I'm just fantastic. And by the way, we're so glad to be part of Donald Trump's victory because it means good things for Canada.
Whether Canada and Canadians like it or not, they're going to sit there complaining until they're blue in the face about how they're going to come after the abortion rights in Canada. Trudeau, I need to pull up the meme, David. It's almost a joke. A month ago, he was saying too many immigrants in Canada. He's going to come after schools and universities and businesses that are employing or exploiting of the immigration loopholes. And now he says we're going to welcome all of the fleeing immigrants from illegals from America under Trump into Canada. Did I misunderstand that, or did he actually say that?
No, that's exactly what he said. But I can tell you this, the Trudeau government is completely ill prepared for the border crisis that's going to occur as a result of putting Tom Homan in charge of being the border czar. There are millions, tens of millions of illegals in the United States who are going to go not to Mexico, but to Canada. And they are going there right now. We are in the midst of a border crisis as I speak. And the Trudeau government is not prepared to deal with it. They might think it's a good thing for them, actually. But I tell you, Justin Trudeau's out of the country right now. He's in Peru. And he's left idiots like Melanie Joly and Chrystia Freeland in charge of the government. And it's embarrassing.
I'm going to see if I can pull up the tweet, but it's wild that even under Biden, Roxham border, Rebel News, Alexa Lavoie was covering it. They had basically tantamount to an open border, but they had nowhere near the amount of crossing from the southern border because they have to go from the south to New York, then get a prepaid bus ticket by Eric Adams to go up to the Quebec border to cross illegally into Canada. So what is the situation? Do you know what the immigration, the illegals crossing from the U.S. into Canada situation is right now?
Yeah, 20,000 last year, 20,000 illegals crossed the border. I did a show on this recently, and it's going to probably compound by 4 or 5 times in the next couple of months because the illegals who came here from Costa Rica, who came here from China, who came here from all over the world thanks to the Biden-Harris open borders, are not going back to where they came. They're going north to Canada. You remember Justin Trudeau said during the last border crisis, come on north. Canada welcomes the refugees of the world. And that's exactly what people are going to remember. No, he hasn't said it again. He's escaped the country right now, actually. He's in Peru today instead of dealing with this.
Why is he in Peru?
He's at a Asian Pacific conference. He's been gone all week. He put out a message saying the government of Canada is doing no business on Thursday. And people thought, oh, he's proroguing, meaning he's calling off the parliamentary session. Didn't turn out to be that way. He's just ignoring the business of Canada. And this is the way Justin Trudeau conducts business.
Okay, this is wild. Before we actually get too far into the meat and potatoes of today, for those who may not know who you are, David, I know who you are, but 30,000-foot overview. I know you're a journalist at Post Millennial up in Canada, but give us a brief history. I won't get into childhood.
Well, I spent most of my life in the Canadian military. I was a public affairs officer in the Canadian Air Force. Very proud of my service. Supported every American war, but I don't anymore because I realize where those are going. I worked on Parliament Hill for over 10 years, and I'm now working for the Post Millennial. I've worked for the Daily Caller. I've even worked for CBC News, believe it or not. But I am a journalist, and I'm an independent journalist, and I work for Canadians. Is what I'm doing right now. I work to get the truth out. What I say about my station is we resolve to resist, and we give you all the news you need to know. And which is something I don't think CBC or the mainstream media is doing because they're subsidized these days. And most people can't believe this, but most of the media in Canada is subsidized by the Trudeau government.
I think the audience does know that to some extent, but flesh that out. So you're independent. You don't ask for any of the federal bailouts or subsidies.
Or from Russia or anybody else.
No, you don't even need to. It's like it's going to be the new thing. Like you don't need to be even a Russian asset in order to be a Russian propagandist. If you don't if you criticize the Canadian government, you'll be a Russian asset.
Exactly.
Have you noticed in the last couple of years have numbers been going up? Like are people fleeing Canadian legacy media to come independent?
I would say it's incredible how people are fleeing Canadian media. CBC is getting fewer views than about the average YouTuber is getting in Canada. It's I would say it's actually faster than what's happening in the US in terms of the mainstream media, the legacy media dying. Most people in Canada are getting their news now from independent media and new media, which I'm representing both. I have a YouTube station. I'm also working for New Media, which is the daily or the
I love it. You call it a YouTube station. I'm pulling up your channel. Krayden. Well, let me make sure I share the right one. Krayden's Right with David Krayden.
yes, and the post millennial, which is new media. These are media that are not getting money from the Canadian government. And I have no problem putting my compatriots in there as well. I'm talking about Rebel News and other media organs that are not getting money from the federal government. Trudeau bought off the media about 3 years ago. He said, I'm going to subsidize you because I expect you to give me the news that I want to hear. And it hasn't happened now, but because people are rebelling against that. Canadians are sick of the Trudeau government controlling speech. They want free speech back, and that's why we're here.
It's amazing. I mean, people know about was it $600 million bailout back in 2019, which was for print media. And then you had the digital effective subsidizing through government ads, COVID ads. And he makes that joke during one of his dinner speeches, like this is the type of coverage that buying off the media gets you. And everyone thought it was a self-deprecating joke. The ultimate joke on joke was that the headlines that he showed as to the bad media that he was getting was still whitewashing the Trudeau's corruption and scandals, which we're going to get into right now. So hold on. You got, I shared the link to your YouTube channel. Do you have a Rumble channel as well?
I do. You can find me at David Krayden at Rumble. Yeah, same
Awesome.
same name. Yeah,
I'll share. I'm going to put those all in the pinned links afterwards. Okay, so let's get into what's going on up in Canada. There are two sort of parallel scandals going on right now. One is the Indian crisis, where there was an Indian Canadian murdered, and it looks like in collusion with from India terrorists or agents. And then there's the China infiltrating the elections or influencing the last two elections scandal that have been having hearings going on. That I think I just got news today. Two of the witnesses' testimony is going to be covered up for 99 years. Which one do you want to start with?
Let's start with India, because I find that the biggest distraction right now.
Okay, hold on. Give me 1 second. Oh my.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, sorry. We're getting two things. I'm getting a new computer and I'm getting a doggy door installed. You can have a paralyzed dog sneaking through a doggy door. Okay, so the Indian scandal. I can give the overview. The broad overview is, I don't know how long ago it was, but a Canadian who was Indian was murdered outside, I forget where the community was, British Columbia. And it turns out it's some sort of, allegedly, if we believe the government, and I don't know which government to believe because I don't believe any governments. And so when one is saying it's terrorist related and the other one's saying it's not, I don't know which one not to believe. Canadian Indian man murdered. Allegations of that it was sort of a hit because of some Khalistani related agents with India killing this guy. I don't take it from there.
I don't believe a word of this, to tell you the truth. I don't say that India isn't extremely angry at Justin Trudeau, because he is deliberately putting the Khalistani extremists in positions where they can't be criticized. And this must make India very mad. But to believe that the world's biggest democracy is somehow on par with China is, to me, ludicrous. But Trudeau is leading with this, saying, watch out for those dangerous Indian diplomats who are sitting around plotting murder and mayhem for their Khalistani enemies. The Khalistanis are the enemy in Canada. These are extremists. These are terrorists who have done terrible things to people. And Justin Trudeau is in their camp right now. Justin Trudeau thinks these are wonderful people. And the Khalistanis do not represent all Sikh Canadians. In fact, the former Premier of BC said recently, don't think that all Sikh Canadians think the Khalistanis are fine. And these are people who are separatists, who want a separate nation inside the Punjabi region of Canada. And they brought their strife and their anger and their chaos and their murder to Canada. And Justin Trudeau has latched on to that because nobody understands identity politics better than Justin Trudeau. Nobody knows how to exploit identity politics better than Justin Trudeau. And this is what he's done. He
So
has said suddenly India is the enemy.
The
Go ahead.
idea is the Khalistani movement is it was a terrorist movement seeking independence of a portion of India, and it was Indian Khalistanis that were or I guess I don't even know if I can phrase it like that, Indian Khalistanis that were pushing this movement for independence of a certain region of India. And the idea here in Canada, who is it? Who is the allegation? What is the allegation as to who killed this man and why?
That India, the government of India, literally the government of India, conspired with the killer to kill this individual. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. Let the law decide that. Let the courts decide that. But for Trudeau to expound upon that and to say that all of these Indian diplomats are sitting around somehow creating mayhem and murder for these Khalistani terrorists who are in Canada is to me ridiculous. And the fact is, the enemy in Canada is terrorism, no matter where it comes from, the face of terrorism. And you know, I saw a video recently. You might be able to show it. I sent it to you earlier, where Khalistanis are demonstrating in British Columbia, saying that they control Canada, not the people who are here.
Let me bring this up.
And it's absolutely outrageous.
Let me see if I can share this. Hold on. I believe I can. It's in my DMs. No. Hold on. Let me just make sure that I don't accidentally share my cell number in here. Okay. So how do I want to hold on here. We're going to do it like this. Okay. So this is from British Columbia.
This is from Surrey, BC, earlier this week. And this video has been shown on X. There it is.
Okay, let's go.
Palestine, this is our country. You are from Europe. We are owner of this country. Go back to Europe. Go back to England. Support our England people.
So
you go back to Europe. You are not Canadian. We are Canadian.
It almost sounds like a troll.
Country. You are invaders.
Okay, hold on. So it sounds like a troll. These are Khalistani Canadians.
These are Khalistani Canadians suggesting that they are in control of the country, and that Justin Trudeau doesn't get it either. He hasn't gone extreme enough. But Justin Trudeau has empowered these people by suggesting India is the enemy. And you have to remember what started this whole thing. Why did Justin Trudeau on Thanksgiving, just before Thanksgiving weekend, have a news conference and say, India is the enemy. India is the enemy. And the RCMP, which has become like the FBI in the United States, David, the RCMP, the fabled RCMP, the storied RCMP. This is, the organization that's been featured in so many films as this greatest law society, this greatest police ever, even more than the FBI, has become like the FBI right now. It does whatever the government tells it to do. It has not gone after Justin Trudeau for a myriad of crimes that he's been accused of. It has not gone after Justin Trudeau for his cabinet ministers who are being accused of a myriad of crimes. But it suddenly says India is the enemy because Justin Trudeau told us to do so. I believe that very strongly.
Okay, now I understand it. So the idea is the individual who was murdered was in fact a Sikh separatist. Nobody knows why he was murdered, but Justin Trudeau seizes on the murder to allege that the Indian government orchestrated the murder of this Sikh Khalistani separatist in Canada to effectively manufacture a crisis with the Indian government.
Exactly. And it was the Indian government, by the way, that accused Justin Trudeau at the last G20 conference in India of having his plane loaded with cocaine. Huge story around the world.
I remember that. I got nervous because I couldn't find it confirmed anywhere else. I saw one video of an Indian politician, alleging it. I was like, okay, I don't know how much credence to give it. What is Jagmeet Singh's connection to the Khalistani movement? Do I understand the accusations against him is that he can't go back to India because he is a Khalistani supporter, and
That's exactly it. Exactly it.
Holy shit! I'm sorry. It actually all makes sense now that we put like a decade of information concisely into a few minutes.
No, Jagmeet Singh is a sympathizer with the Khalistanis. There's no question about that. And there's a lot of people who suggest that Justin Trudeau has been so inclined to support the Khalistani separatists because Jagmeet Singh was his partner in crime. Jagmeet Singh was his coalition partner, his de facto coalition partner. And he really feels he's going to lose part of his identity politics. I can tell you, the Indo-Canadians I talk to and the Sikh Canadians I talk to every week are saying this is insanity. Justin Trudeau is aligned with the wrong people. Justin Trudeau is aligned with terrorists. We want nothing to do with them.
This is actually mind-blowing because now a lot of things make sense, and this distraction, I understand now why people can view this as an outright distraction, because it's easier to distract from Chinese infiltration into the Liberal Party with the distraction of India being responsible for allegedly plotting a murder of a Canadian citizen who happened to be a Sikh separatist, and we'll get to it as well, the tenant media Lauren Chen Russiagate hoax up in Canada to distract from what's going on with the government. Okay, let me see if I have any more questions though. So the individual, nobody knows yet who murdered him other than the allegations that it was orchestrated by the Indian government?
No, there's been nobody has been convicted of the crime, no.
All right, and now there was another story, and I'm trying to see if it pieces together, of a known Indian terrorist who was just arrested in Canada on gun charges. Had you been following that?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so now they're stepping up, trying to extradite. Who is this? Arsh Dalla, arrested in Canada.
Yeah.
He was arrested last month in connection with an accidental shooting. He and an associate were traveling in a car when a gun was discharged. How an Indian terrorist ends up on the streets of Canada procuring a firearm when we have the strictest gun laws ever. Thus far, there's no connection between this known Indian terrorist, allegedly, and the assassination of the guy in British Columbia.
Yes, but once again, David, you've got this is at odds with the Trudeau narrative. Because Trudeau says the Indian representatives, the Indian diplomats are sitting around plotting terrorist schemes or plotting murder. This guy is, the Indian government has said we're looking for this guy. He is a Khalistani terrorist. That's who was discovered. We haven't heard anything about the RCMP since they delivered their incredibly phony news conference about how they're going after Indians everywhere who are possibly implicated in this. What did we actually find in the last couple of weeks? A Khalistani terrorist. And there are plenty of these people in Canada, thanks to Justin Trudeau, who propagates the myth that somehow India is the enemy and Khalistani terrorists are our friends. And that's effectively what Justin Trudeau has been doing.
That's wild. I'm going to bring this up here. This is Chet Chisholm, my man up in Canada, who says it's worth mentioning that Inderjeet Singh Rayat, a Khalistani terrorist who was responsible for the Air India bombing that killed 329 innocent people, is a free man walking the streets in Canada. It's wild. Okay. Now I understand this. And so Trudeau expelled a bunch of Indian diplomats. India then retaliates and expels a bunch of Canadian diplomats. And he's gonna go to war with a nuclear power that not that there's going to be any physical hot kinetic war out of this, but pick and fights. But it's a good distraction from, I guess, part two of this, which is Chinese infiltration into the Canadian government. But before we get there, I presume you're also following the tenant media Lauren Chen scandal. I'm calling it a scandal. I'll put it in quotes. You're following that distraction as well?
Well, that's why I had you on my show last week. I think this is outrageous what's going on with Lauren Chen. Absolutely outrageous. Hauling her in front of a parliamentary committee and then accusing her of being a Russian agent when she knows damn well she can't say anything without compromising her own legal case. This is outrageous, and it angers me. It wasn't just liberals who did this; it was conservative MPs who were there.
Look, I know you mentioned it briefly, and I said, hold off, we'll talk about it in live time. You took some, I was on your channel, and I appreciate people say, don't split the vote. It's going to compromise overturning a Trudeau government. But I also don't believe that the Conservatives are acting any differently than the Liberals. Maybe just a little bit less extreme. You took some flack for what I said on your channel, but I mean, what's your assessment? I mean, we're in Canada, we in Canada, people sort of don't know what's going on in terms of America complains about a two-party system, but a five-party system is no better when it's effectively a two-party system. You got your conservatives and then your PPC, which is a little bit more conservative than conservatives. And then you got your liberals, which are NDP, Green Party liberals, Marxist communists, and another one. So you still have two parties, just multiple factions. People look up in Canada and say, oh, Pierre Poilievre is your Donald Trump, to which I say Canada should wish. I mean, your assessment of the Conservative Party of Canada under Poilievre's leadership.
I think Poilievre should have said a lot more about the victory of Donald Trump. This was a huge victory. It wasn't just he squeaked by. He won the Electoral College vote. He won the popular vote. He has won the Senate 53-47. He's won the House of Representatives. And he has the judicial. This is a probably unprecedented, historic affirmation of conservative values. Where is Pierre Poilievre right now? He's not saying very much except, thank you very much. Nice. I'm very glad you won the vote. He should be celebrating this. He should be celebrating this as a victory of an anti-globalist, Donald Trump, against the forces that would enslave us. And he's not doing that because he's afraid that too many Canadians will say, "Oh, you're in the pocket of Donald Trump. Oh, you think too much of the Republican Party. Oh, you're not to be trusted because you don't really believe in Canada." And that's being generated by the crazy columns that are being written right now, the crazy news stories written by the usual suspects about how dangerous Donald Trump is. Pierre Poilievre needs to rise above that right now and say, this is a moment of freedom for the whole world, not just for the USA, but for the whole world. Donald Trump is repudiating globalism. Donald Trump is standing up and saying, I'm going to be different. I'm going to have people in my cabinet like Bobby Kennedy Jr., who dare to talk about getting rid of fluoride, who dare to talk about not forcing people under vaccine mandates. There's so much to talk about here. There's so much to celebrate. And yet the Conservative Party Canada wants to retreat into a little back portion and say, it's very nice that Donald Trump got reelected, but we're not going to say much more. I'm disappointed because yes, Pierre Poilievre will be the next Prime Minister of Canada. Yes, he's going to get a massive majority unless something terrible happens. But he needs to say that this is a victory, not just for the United States, but for the whole world. Everybody who wants freedom, who strives, who thirsts for liberty. Donald Trump is there. And no, I'm not receiving any money from Donald Trump either. But believe me, this has been an historic event. In my column in Human Events this week, I said this was 7 historic days that changed the world. Just like John Reed wrote about the Bolshevik Revolution over 100 years ago. Nobody expected that to happen. That turned out to be a horrible disaster. But what Donald Trump is doing is a repudiation of all of that socialism, all of that Bolshevism, all of that wokeism that's occurred in the last 10 years. And this will be a victory for the human being, for victory for the liberty. And I really believe that. And no, we're not hearing that from the Conservative Party Canada.
Well, first of all, that is fantastic. And I'm going to clip that, and everyone should feel free to clip that and tag Poilievre, because I've said it about Pierre since the beginning. Is he better than Trudeau? Yes. By how much? That depends on which way the political winds are blowing. He didn't support the truckers until it became politically popular to support the truckers. Then he goes and gets his breakfast photo with some of the organizers. Then it goes south, and he no longer supports the trucker protest after Rouleau comes out with his order ratifying Trudeau's invocation of the Emergencies Act. Then Pierre tries to pretend, I was supporting the inflation protest, not the trucker protest. And so he's a political fair weather friend in that he will do what he believes is politically palatable at the time. And so if more Canadians were supporting of Donald Trump, at least publicly, I think he'd come out and say something more energetic. As it is, he'll sit there and reap the benefits of a Trump presidency, which Canada will reap despite their best efforts. And if it ever becomes politically popular to do so, then he'll come out in support of Trump. But you're 1,000% right. And so, yeah, he'll be the next leader, but the pressure needs to be put on him to not be a little sissy, a political sissy, and to not be afraid of the negative publicity that he will get regardless from the CBC. Those pics, I mean, you're watching from up. Where do you live?
Ottawa.
So you're watching, in as much as the libs are melting down here, the latest picks for Trump, RFK Jr. for HHS, Health and Human Services, Tulsi Gabbard for Department of National Intelligence, Matt Gaetz for Attorney General, who's the other, Pete Hegseth for, there's a fly in here, Pete Hegseth for, what was it, Secretary of Defense, I believe?
Yeah, Secretary of Defense, yes.
Names that are making people's faces melt. What's going on in Ottawa? Are people crying?
Some of our, it's not that the politicians are crying because they can't. Because if you look at people like who's in charge this week in Ottawa, I did a show on this morning, and Melanie Joly is in charge of Ottawa right now, along with Chrystia Freeland. And of course, they put these two women in front of the cameras, and they look like deer in front of the headlights. They don't know what to say about Donald Trump being president. That wasn't written. The talking points weren't written because the liberals, like the Democrats in the States, didn't anticipate this happening. They really thought Kamala Harris would win, and they're not prepared for this. They were not prepared at all. So when Melanie Joly was asked about what about the border crisis, Tom Homan, God bless him, the new border czar who's coming in, he's not waiting until January 20th to start work. He's working right now, and he's saying we're going to get these illegals out of the country, come hell or high water. We're going to do it whether sanctuary cities want it to happen or not. Where do you think these people are going, Viva? Where do you think they're going? They're going to come to Canada. And they're already doing that. Right now at the Canadian border in Ontario and Quebec, we've got illegals trying to get across. And what do you think Melanie Joly had to say? We'll talk about this when the time comes, because I don't have an answer right now.
She is the most, I think there's levels of ineptitude, and she's more inept than Kamala Harris, and that says a lot because I think she has even less work experience. Like Kamala, for her bloated resume, still has years of being in that state of Attorney General, District Attorney, whatever. Melanie Joly is the most fish out of water, out of her element politician I've ever seen. Incompetence with a pretty smile is I think the only way that she ever got through anything. You're effectively leaderless. You're leaderless in Canada, like America's leaderless until Daddy comes home.
Well, I mean, she literally smirked when she was asked about this because she thought she was on CBC News when she was asked about this. She won't go anywhere else except CBC News to answer questions, and she smirked when she was asked that question about what are you going to do about the border crisis that's coming, and she just said, "Don't ask me that question." But Melanie Joly would have been a very fine travel agent. She's a horrible minister of foreign affairs. Horrible.
Minister of Foreign Affairs. I mean, her resume consisted of being the mayor of Montreal for, I don't know, 2 years? I don't know how many years she was mayor of Montreal for. I'll look it up. If anybody, I'll see if I can find that video. She's the epitome of incompetence. Even more incompetent than Kamala Harris, if you can believe it. So the influx has started. Is there? I don't know if there's daily stats or videos. Has there been an uptick, like in real time?
There are right now. There are thousands of people trying to cross the border. right now, today.
Once upon a time, I was given good intel, but I was never able to get to Ottawa to do an in-person, expose that they were kicking out local homeless people from shelters in order to make room for illegal immigrants up in Ottawa. Had you heard about that?
Yes, and these illegal immigrants who came in during that period at Roxham Road were literally destroying hotel rooms, because just like they're doing in New York City, where the 4-star hotels have been turned into migrant sanctuaries, we were doing the same thing in Toronto, Montreal, and Ottawa. And yes, migrants were coming to Ottawa and literally kicking through the doors, destroying hotel rooms. You think it's not going to happen again? Of course it will. And it's going to happen 10 times as bad, because we've got that many more people to worry about. Do you think Mark Miller, the immigration minister in Canada, is prepared for this? His immigration plan is to put everything 2 years ahead. He's talking about paring down immigration in 2 years. He's always talked about 2 years after they get reelected. But we're not even talking about legal immigration here. We're talking about illegal immigration, which has plagued the United States for the last 4 years. Tens of millions of migrants have come into the United States illegally, have been flown across the United States at the behest of the Biden-Harris government. Those people are now looking north to Canada and saying, here's a haven for us, because Biden's gone, but Justin Trudeau's still in power. And didn't Justin Trudeau put out a tweet when it was still Twitter in those days saying, refugees of the world, come to Canada.
Mm-hmm.
You're welcome here.
I gotta bring this one up, because whenever Melanie posts something, Ezra Levant goes and shows this to her. That's Melanie Joly. That's Mohammed Abbas, I believe, in the middle, who is a known terrorist leader, depending on whether or not terrorist or freedom fighter, depending on perspective. And I'm being tongue in cheek. This is Melanie Joly. Every time she posts something, Ezra Levant says, "Isn't this you holding the hand of a confirmed terrorist?" It's very interesting. Now we could piece it all together, consistently taking the side of terrorist organizations, and then wondering why there is strife at home.
Well, didn't the Trudeau government, and I have pictures of the House leader of the time, the Liberal House leader, welcoming a former member of the Waffen-SS. And
They didn't know. They didn't know. They fought the Russians. They thought they were the heroes. They just forgot what World War II was about.
The hypocrisy is incredible. How stupid they were to think that if you were fighting the Russians in the Second World War, we were on your side. They don't even know history. But to invite a former Nazi, a former member of the Waffen-SS, whose regiment was involved in war crimes, to the House of Commons is the absolute incredible. Either it's stupidity, or it reveals who you are. You really don't give a damn about who comes in, as long as they vote Liberal. And I'm sorry, actually, and I hate to introduce this, but the Liberals have said they're not going to release the names on the Deschênes Committee. And why do you think that is? Because so many of them are Liberal supporters who vote Liberal.
Tell everybody what the Deschênes Committee is, because I think
the Deschênes Committee was a Brian Mulroney appointed committee to find out how many Nazis, former Nazis, Canada allowed into Canada after the Second World War, as a result that they could help us in the Cold War. This was perpendicular to the Paperclip Commission, the Operation Paperclip in the United States, which allowed a lot of Nazi rocket scientists and other people into the country because it was deemed politically necessary, because they were anti-communist. A lot of the people revealed in the Deschênes Committee are Nazis, former members of the Waffen-SS especially, who we invited into Canada because they were deemed to be anti-communist and safe. Now, Trudeau does not want these names released. Brian Mulroney did not want these names released. Why? Because there's so many Ukrainian Canadians and others who vote for Liberals and vote for Conservatives. today, and whose descendants don't want that information released because it's politically embarrassing. I find this disgusting. I'm a Ukrainian Canadian. And people say, you're kidding, because I oppose the war in Ukraine. I oppose the tens of billions of dollars that have gone to Ukraine. But I want the truth out in terms of who. I know it wasn't my family. My father came here he was born Canadian. His father came here in the 1920s, long before the Second World War. But I would like to know how many Ukrainian Canadians are in this country because the government let them in. And this is a complete disgrace. And Justin Trudeau is covering this up right now. He's covering up the whole, just like he's covering up everything else, because it's an embarrassment to his despicable regime.
It is it's wild. I mean, I want to bring it up because they're now revealing that they're going to hide the names. Let me just bring this one up here. They're going to keep the names of two witnesses secret. Two witnesses to give secret evidence on China meddling to foreign interference inquiry. They've been holding their inquiries now. Let's say history repeats, and they're going to not disclose certain information for 99 years, I think, to protect the witnesses. And so, in as much as they don't want to reveal the names of how many Nazis Canada let in, in parallel with Operation Paperclip, which was the operation through which the West was taking Nazi scientists to help them with NASA and all that other stuff. It's repeating history yet again. But I don't want to get into the China stuff yet. Actually, the Russia stuff with I feel bad. I'm not trying to put the blast on Lauren Chen. I want to put the blast on the joke, because this all started with whether or not the Conservatives are any better than the Liberals and Pierre Poilievre's cowardice. But when I saw Raquel Danko's hypocrisy when she was grilling Lauren Chen like she's a criminal, like a convicted criminal, when she is not even a named defendant, I really got the feeling that on the one hand, this shows that the Conservatives are liberals light, or liberals just driving at the speed limit, but also that the Conservatives might have something to hide as relates to actual Chinese interference in Canadian politics as well. Tell me if my inkling of my spidey senses are tingling right.
I found it absolutely fascinating that Pierre Poilievre agreed to the Bloc Québécois. And I consider the Bloc Québécois to be a treasonous party. I say that all the time. They are a bunch of traitors. These are people who sit in the House of Commons who advocate for Quebec separatism. What the hell are they doing in a federal House of Commons doing that? They should not even be there. I don't care
Dave,
if people don't like that, but it's true.
Let me explain that to the American audience, because they might not appreciate the nuance of what you're saying. Canada has its provincial and federal composition, sort of like America has the federal and states. And there's one equivalent of a state, that being Quebec, that wants to separate, or that has a political movement that is built on the idea of Quebec separating from Canada. So it'd be like California seceding from the Republic of these United States of America. There's a federal political party called the Bloc Québécois, whose stated objective is to separate from Canada. So they are a federal party whose objective is to remove Quebec from the federation of which they are a federal party. So it would be like it would be like California or a state having a federal representative who's in the federal government, but only to separate that state from the federal government. That's that. Okay, sorry. So that people know. So a treasonous.
Yeah, or I would say it would be like in 1860. If you were a secessionist senator or House of Representative, you resigned your seat to fight for secession. You went back to your southern state to fight for secession. You didn't stay in the federal legislature. You didn't stay in the House of Representatives or the Senate to fight for secession. But that's what these people are doing. But anyway, what happened was the Bloc Québécois suggested, okay, what do we do about this conundrum of who are the Chinese spies? We'll kick it upstairs to the Hague inquiry, which is still going on right now under Justice Hague. It's an inquiry into whether or not Canada knew about foreign interference. So the Bloc Québécois, which I say it really has no business making recommendations on this, suggested this question be kicked upstairs to the Hague inquiry. The Liberals, the government said, great idea. The official opposition conservatives said, wonderful, we approve of this. And I said at the time, why? Why do you want to kick this upstairs? Obviously, you got something to hide. And within months, the Hogue inquiry came back and said, we are in no legal position to reveal the names in this report.
Stop. The names of Canadian parliamentarians who are currently sitting in Parliament who have been either compromised, at risk of compromise, or unwittingly compromised by Chinese interests or Chinese interference. Those are the names that they refuse to release.
Precisely.
Sitting members of Canadian Parliament.
Sitting members and former members in the House of Commons and the Senate. The Hogue inquiry said we can't release these names because it's beyond our legal parameters to do so. And so they basically put the ball back in the court of the journalists to say, I can't believe we're putting up with this in Canada.
And it's not, I mean, they couldn't be sanctioned without their identities becoming made public or known. So they are actually sitting there, unsanctioned, currently representing, I don't know who they're representing, but currently sitting as members of Parliament. Do we know, first of all, I guess the first question is, what type of interference are we alluding to, or do we know that we're talking about right now?
Well, no, we don't know exactly what they did or what they got in return. This is what makes this so maddening, because there's so many issues that are arising out of this. We know that there was political interference in terms of helping MPs win elections. But we don't know is that how many MPs, there's 11 people on the list, which has never been released. What did they get? And what did they have to do for what they got? What did they have to give to China or these other foreign influencers who are always sort of secondary? What did they have to do to get that quid pro quo? And the Canadian media seems absolutely unreluctant to find out the answer. And I find that completely disgraceful.
Do we know any of the names? I understood maybe that 4 names had been disclosed, and 1 of them was conservative, 3 were liberal.
We have the only name that is possibly indicted in this, and it's the report apparently says this was an unwitting response is a transit minister Ang, and I don't know. And she has denied the allegation. She said it's completely untrue. There's only one reporter in Canada who's really devoting his full time on this. Is Sam Cooper, who has a fantastic station on Substack, who does a lot of research on this. And I sent you a couple of stories from Sam. He is doing some really good research on this. But nobody else in the parliamentary press corps wants to ask the questions. And I tell you, nobody from anybody in the government or the official opposition wants to talk about this. The only one who's really talked about it has been the Green Party leader of 2 different, a party of 2 seats, who wants to talk about this. Nobody else wants to talk about this.
It is amazing that they don't even see the political opportunity to talk about it. Like the only reason conservatives would not be making hay over this and subpoenaing people to testify instead of Lauren Chen is because it implicates them. There's no other plausible explanation. The Green Party, they only have 2 seats. For all their foibles, they probably have minimal exposure in this. So it makes no sense that nobody else is even looking into it.
Well, what fascinated me, there was a parliamentary report released just before Thanksgiving, about how the Canadian Security Intelligence Service told the government that there were 2 Chinese spies working at the Winnipeg microbiology lab. Mm-hmm. This is a top secret lab. This is a national lab, which they've hidden away in Winnipeg. Nobody even knew it was there. Nobody was even aware. Well, few people were aware that it was there. And there were two Chinese scientists working at this lab, and I've got to pronounce their names correctly. Xiao Chu, Professor Dr. Xiao Chu, and her husband, Dr. Qi Ding Cheng, were working at this lab in Winnipeg.
What was the lab working on, if I may ask? I know the answer.
The lab was working on Ebola in discovering how Ebola could be used or how Ebola could be manufactured. This is incredible information. Now, 7 months before these two were sent back to China, basically because they were they were committing espionage. Nobody in Canada wants to talk about this, but they were sent back to Canada because they were spying for the Chinese government. They were sending back documents and material from the Winnipeg lab to the Chinese army, the People's Liberation Army. This is all well documented. And even Pierre Poilievre got upset about this when this information was released. CSIS warned the Canadian government about this 7 months in advance. And nothing was done. Nothing was done until 7 months later, these two were quietly removed from their posts and sent back to China.
Were there disappeared without a trace?
My question is, they were working on Ebola, and guess where they went after they went back to China?
If I'm
the Wuhan Institute of Virology, where we know now, unless you're brain dead, where the COVID virus came from. So my question is, and I don't have conclusive proof of this, obviously, but did the COVID virus originate in Canada? Is that what these two were working on? Is that what these two were doing in Canada? Because they went back to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and suddenly we have this lab breakout. And to me, this demands answers, and we're getting none from the Liberal government. In fact, the Speaker of the House, Anthony Rota, this is the same patsy who was there when the Nazi was invited to speak in front of Parliament. He demanded answers, and the Liberal government told him to shut up. They threatened to sue him.
Just to highlight this, by the way, because the timeline may not have been clear for everybody, let me just get to the article. The couple were marched out of the facility in July 2019. So these are the two Chinese spies working on allegedly Ebola, marched out, presumably they head back to Wuhan in July 2019. And COVID, whatever it is, will be struck end of 2019, hold on one second. It was 2020. That by the time it reached. So yeah, interesting timing, interesting time frame, and interesting lack of intellectual rigor, even by the CBC, which is that article is from when? February. I think that's it. They wrote their piece on it, so the government can't say that they never covered it, but certainly nobody's investigating that like they should.
Well, the other interesting question, though, David, is that why did it take 7 months for the government to react to this? And why did the government cover this whole thing up? Why did they pretend there was no problem at the microbiology lab for so long until it finally emerged due to an access to information request? Was there a quid pro quo is my question. Did Trudeau say, okay, we're going to let you leave quietly? We're not going to talk about the work you were doing. We're not going to admit you were sending back samples to the People's Liberation Army in China. But I expect something in return. This is the question I have, and believe me, Justin Trudeau does not want to answer it. The Liberal government does not want to respond to it because it comes far too close to home. Was there a quid pro quo in terms of the next election? Because Trudeau called a snap election in 2019 immediately after these two were turfed and sent back to China. The information was sealed. Everything was over. And suddenly we have a snap election, and then we start talking about Chinese interference in federal elections, especially Toronto.
Holy shit, Dave. As you mention this, let me just pull up one article about training Chinese soldiers. Now, I've talked about it at length, or at least many times. Remove, and I want to bring it in. Add to stage. I think I add to stage. Here we go. No, I took it out. Add to stage. When Canada is no longer training Chinese troops, defense minister says, the defense minister, who happens to be Harjit Sajjan. I mean, this is all coming together. All these dots are connecting in real time. But when were they training them? They were training them in 2019. Let me see if this article.
Exactly.
They were training Chinese soldiers on Canadian soil for wintertime combat in 2019. And it became known. And then they said, oh, so sorry, we won't do it anymore. While they have Chinese spies who are working in biolab being shipped back to in the dead of the night. Why would they let spies leave ever in the first place? And then COVID hits, and now you've got the trilogy of problems supporting Khalistani terrorists or separatists in Canada, apparently having Chinese infiltration in elections after having had Chinese spies in biolab experimentation, and training Chinese soldiers for wintertime combat. Holy hell. Is Canada just a Chinese vassal in North America?
It apparently looks that way. I would hate to say it, but everything, as you said, the dots are connecting in terms of the influence of China over Canadian policy. It's absolutely frightening. And you recall during the whole COVID pandemic, Canada never once accused China of having any role in the creation or dissemination of the disease. In fact, if you recall, we had a health expert up there of Chinese origin, Chinese ethnicity,
Theresa Tam,
who constantly repeated communist Chinese lies about the pandemic. Another example of how China is in the pocket, or Canada has been in the pocket of China.
Here, by the way, this is from the Government of Canada website. Military exercises with China's People Liberation Army. Question: why is the Canadian Armed Forces engaging in military exercises and defense activities with the People's Liberation Army? Canada remains committed to being a reliable player in the Asia-Pacific region. The Canadian Armed Forces have not engaged in bilateral training exercises in China in 2019, 2020. They have not engaged. When did they stop? 2018? 2019. It was roughly around the same time. Holy crap. And now you just made me make another connection. Theresa Tam gets out there implementing China-like restrictions in Canada, while Justin Trudeau donates 16 tons of our PPE, personal protective equipment, to China in the early stages of COVID. Canada's a vassal of China. It is a political vassal of China. Now I just got black.
That's exactly how it appears. And I remember the anger about the talking points being enunciated by Canada during this COVID crisis. And so many people said, it sounds like we're reading from the talking points of communist China. And in retrospect, we were reading from the talking points of communist China. And, we have, and not to mix this up, but we bring journalists now in front of these kangaroo courts, these Stalinist show trials, this House of Canadian Un-American Activities Committee, and we accuse them of being spies. And yet the Trudeau government was the one engineering spying. The Trudeau government has been the one allowing spying to going on, has been covering it up. The Trudeau government is the one that allows communist China dialogue, communist China's narrative to be paramount. And if Canadians aren't mad about this, if they don't want answers about this, there's something wrong. And if the Conservative Party continues to sit on the sidelines and say, well, we'll deal with this when we're in government, I'm sorry, it's too late. Deal with it now.
And now you say that, and then you go right back to the beginning. Justin Trudeau admiring the basic dictatorship of China. Holy shit.
Exactly.
David, I think you might have caused me to connect dots that have formed a big black pill in my brain. And conservatives are doing jack squat about it. The only person who's raising some form of stink in his limited capacity is Maxime Bernier, and the conservatives are probably not just as compromised, but sufficiently compromised that they have absolutely no interest in doing anything about this. Holy cows, David! If I may I bring up some of the Rumble rants over on Rumble, and I'm going to see if we've got any questions in. Don't forget about Klaus Schwab penetrating the cabinets. Oh yeah, we've got our WEF puppets there. Chu Chong says you should look into the connection between the Winnipeg lab and Fort Detrick in the U.S. They had a mystery respiratory virus outbreak at an old folks home near Fort Detrick. Actually, I will look at that. Then we got Lord of the Ree says the United States should annex Canada and put an end to all of this chicanery. Once and for all, you don't have to read the okay, I have my head of you. And then Chet Chisholm says COVID-19 came back to North America when infected Canadian Forces members returned from the military games in Wuhan, and it spread among the populace. That was covered up too. All that I'm telling you is that I believe that I got what was COVID in 2019 when I was sick. I remember never being sicker in my life. I remember trying to make videos. It was December 2019, and then my kid got it the day after we went. I'm not trying to be racist. My kid got a heavy fever, respiratory thing after we went for lunch in Chinatown, and then COVID hit like basically a month later. It was the Chinese New Year. I remember we went down to Chinatown, had our lunch at Lanzhou Noodles. He got sick, and I'm like, then I put that together a little bit later. But at the time, I mean, I said it at the time, but at the time you said that you were an anti-Asian racist. Yeah, look, I got you blackpilled us. No, because I've been, covering these. Everyone's been saying Viva, look into the scientists, and I knew it summarily. I've been talking about the training of the Chinese soldiers. I've been talking about the Chinese donating PPE to China. But my goodness, it's all obviously interconnected, like deeply so.
No, it's terrible when you look at it. Exactly. It all relates to each other. And you think, what is the common denominator here? Unfortunately, I think it's like everything in politics. And I spent too much of my life in politics. It's all about money. It's all about who pays the bills. And China has a lot of money to dispense. And I really think the Liberal government has been receiving a lot of money from China over the last decade.
Someone really wanted me to remind, I'm glad I remembered. China has significant ownership in Canada's mining and energy sectors, and in some high-tech firms. Mining China state-owned enterprises own 10 to 26% of several of Canada's largest mining companies, including Teck, First Quantum, Ivanhoe, Lithium America. China's Simonine Research Group purchased one of Canada's only 2 lithium mines in Manitoba in 2019. What the fuck is going on? This is the AI overview. Chinese money still chasing Canadian critical mining deals. This is insanity. Holy shit.
Well, exactly. And it all comes down to this, David, in terms of what is Justin Trudeau focused on? What is the Liberal government focused on? Russian disinformation? That's his focus right now. Russian agents under every bed, like it's 1952 again. What about China? They're not under our bed. They're controlling our bank accounts. They're controlling the money supply. That's what's going on. It's not Russian agents under our bed. It's not India plotting terrible things against Khalistani terrorists. It's China. And everything Justin Trudeau does is to distract from that and project his own fears onto everybody else. That's what Justin Trudeau is all about in Canada. It's about distracting people from what's really going on. And has he benefited personally from this? I don't know.
Oh,
Wouldn't surprise me at all.
If he hasn't benefited already, this is what you call the Obama investment into future speaking fees and future seats on international, unelected globalist organizations. There's no doubt this is an investment for Trudeau's future if it hasn't been an investment in his present. Oh, geez, there was something I want to ask you about Canadian politics. It will come to me in 1 second. Damn it, it won't. Okay, we covered the India, we covered the other Canadian stuff. Ugh, darn it. When it comes back in a second, what else are you working on these days, Dave?
Well, I do a lot of work for the Post Millennial on U.S. politics. I've been spending a lot of time in the Canadian sphere on China, as we just talked about, and the fact that what I call the Canadian government right now is a collection of incompetents and scoundrels. There's no other government in the world, at least a democratic one, where so many incompetents could stay as ministers and so many scoundrels who should be charged criminally. We've got Randy Boissonneau, for instance, our employment minister, who is clearly should not be a minister because he was involved with propagating in his own company while he was a minister. The Liberal government won't defend him, but they won't fire him. Justin Trudeau's wandering around the world right now. And this is not the Canada Canadians grew up with.
Yeah,
I expect a great deal more.
It's not the it's like it's you say it's not the Canada Canadians deserve, and then you have elections, but it's not clear that there's any solution through the voting box. The question that I want to ask you, and you just triggered it, is the pension argument or the pension theory for why there hasn't been an election called. Jagmeet Singh has retracted his coalition with Trudeau, which meant that there should have been an election called by give or take, I want to say September 2025, give or take. Two questions. The theory is that Jagmeet Singh had coalesced with Trudeau so they could wait for those elections to come so that Jagmeet could secure his federal pension. Question number one. And question number two is, did they strike a deal to postpone the election even though Jagmeet is no longer supporting Trudeau for that very same reason?
Yeah, I think it's yes and yes. Jagmeet Singh is the most incompetent leader of any political party in history. He's certainly the worst NDP leader in history. He did this big charade. I'm ripping up the agreement with the Liberals, this de facto coalition agreement, only to survive. Because I'm told his caucus was so angry at him for continuing with this agreement that is going to basically annihilate the New Democratic Party as a party.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, "Okay, I'm gonna rip up this agreement publicly, privately. I'm going to meet with Justin Trudeau and say, don't worry about it," because he's done nothing since then to bring down this government. The Bloc, we bring up the separatist Bloc Québécois. The Bloc wants to bring down the government because they're up in the polls in Quebec. They have a good chance of getting about 40 or 50 seats in Quebec, possibly, if things play out their way. They want an election. The NDP is clearly holding out because Jagmeet Singh wants his pension. And that's as venal as it gets in politics. This man does not even think his party deserves him, let alone the country. He's fighting for his pension. He's fighting for Jagmeet Singh. He's a despicable individual in terms of, I've never seen a politician so absolutely entrapped in his own ego, with the exception, of course, of Justin Trudeau. But Justin Singh, yes, he's fighting for his own. Go ahead.
I had to bring up venal means showing or motivated by susceptibility to bribery. I had never heard the word before. Thought it had to do with I thought I was thinking venereal disease, but it's close enough. So yeah, so the theory is because I think he solidifies his pension by the end of 2025.
Yes, he does, and then he can move forward. I don't know if he's so inept he can't get a job in the private sector as a lawyer. I mean, this is his background. He's a very wealthy man because people can always poke fun of him. The fact that he drives a BMW. He's supposed to be a working class Canadian as a head of the NDP. He's supposed to understand average Canadians.
He's got 2 Rolexes. He's got more designer bikes than anybody should have. He's got his designer kirpan. He wears bespoke British style slim fitting suits. I've been waiting a long time. Earmuffs for anybody who doesn't want to hear a cuss word. I wasn't certain enough to make the accusation that he was actually doing this to solidify his pension. That's a motherfucker of a man to actually do something like that. That is it's beyond dirty. Because I said, it can't be the federal pension. First of all, he's gonna sacrifice his soul for what is I don't know what the pension even is when he hits 60 or whatever, but he needs to hit his however many years in federal government. That is the most scoundrelous thing to do. And like you say, it shows such a lack of confidence in terms of what he's able to do in the private sector, and a lack of confidence in being reelected. If he were to call that election earlier, he's condemned himself to a miserable life, but he'll get that pension.
Yeah, he'll get that pension, and I think he'll be soundly defeated in the next election. Even his seat, by the way, is, and I saw this recently, and this might be motivating Jugmeat like nothing else. His own seat in the lower in Vancouver is very at risk of being lost to the Liberals or the Conservatives. So he might not even be a member of Parliament after the next election. So this is clearly motivating him. But what does not motivate Jug Singh is any sort of concern for Canada or even his own party.
Even his own party.
Even his own party. He doesn't even give a damn about his own party. And why these people should turf this guy on his ass, if I can say that, they should have done that long ago. They should have done it that long ago, because he is the most useless leader of the NDP I've ever seen. And I knew Ed Broadbent personally. I didn't agree with Ed on very much, but he was a good guy. This is a former member of the NDP for your American audience. Basically during the 80s, he was an honest, average Canadian who could never have imagined that the party would accommodate somebody like this just because he was basically a DEI approval.
How old are you, by the way, if I might ask? Everybody knows I've got an infatuation with age, but I think you're going to be older than I think you are. If you have actual memories of the 80s, you've got to be late 50s.
I'm mid 50s.
Okay, good. No, it's like that's so good. You look very good. I would say like conscious memories of politics in the 80s. That's a generation beyond me. That's wild.
Ronald Reagan was my inspiration to believe in politics. I loved Ronald Reagan. I thought he was fantastic. So,
and you're born and raised in Canada.
Yes, British Columbia, Vancouver Island.
What else is there? Did I forget to ask you anything that you absolutely want to share potentially with the American side of things?
I am so enthused about what's happening with Donald Trump right now that it's like I'm wondering, will they stop him? One of my other jobs is to appear on Redacted every week with Clayton Morris and Natalie to talk about Canadian news. And they've been running a lot of stories right now about, is this going to continue? And it worries me, because it's like there's this huge opportunity right now for freedom. Will they allow us to have that freedom? And who are they, you say? Well, I don't know. Is it the globalists? Is it these unseen groups? These groups that work against freedom? These globalist groups that don't want us to get back to basics? I don't know. But I'm watching things happen right now. And as I said, I wrote a column for Human Events this week, which was Ronald Reagan's favorite publication, by the way. And I said, 7 days that shook the world. What's happening right now in the United States, what Donald Trump is doing with the appointments, the nominees he's making, is shaking the world. It's scaring the hell out of the mainstream media. It's shaking the stuff out of globalists who say, this can't continue. This man can't do this to us. I hope he can. I think there's still such a thing. And I've spent a lot of my military career in the United States. I love America. I love what America's all about. It's about freedom. It's about pushing back on aggression. It's about pushing back on people who tell you you can't be free. And I believe Donald Trump is a return to that original definition of freedom. What the Declaration of Independence is all about, what the Constitution is all about. Donald Trump is emblematic of that. Donald Trump is symbolic of that. And Donald Trump embodies that. And I have never been more enthused about American politics since I was just a kid under Ronald Reagan when he entered politics, and he inspired me at that very young age to believe in this American democracy. Donald Trump has done that at this time in my life. He's somehow enabled me to believe again that it's possible to be free.
It's an American Renaissance, David, and I think you said it perfectly. But the greatest thing is that people are going to wake up and realize, oh, Trump isn't actually Hitler. Because if Trump were Hitler and a threat to democracy, this is not how the current alleged president welcomes in the new threat to democracy, Hitler-esque politician. The world's going to find out, and the world will be the beneficiary of the fruits that Donald Trump is going to bring to America and to the world. I'm sitting here, I'm in Florida. It's a renaissance as far as it's an American renaissance. And these picks that he's got, whether you like him or not, they're pissing off the right people, because when the scum of the earth are angry at your picks, the people who have been lying to you about everything for the last decade, when it pisses them off, you know he's doing something right. David,
I couldn't agree more. That's what I'm seeing. You called it American Renaissance. I think that's exactly. This is as Lincoln said, this is a rebirth of freedom that occurred during the Civil War. This is what we're seeing. We can reach back and find so much of American history and reinterpret that towards what's happening right now. And unfortunately, those on the extreme left, the woke idiots who are out there saying Trump is a Nazi, Trump is a fascist, Trump is a dictator from day one, they have no conception of what America is really about. America is about the individual. America is about individual freedom. America is about not the state, but about rising above the state, creating wealth, not through the state, but through individual initiative. And that's what Donald Trump is all about. And for me, as a journalist, and I think for you as a journalist, David, Donald Trump is about free speech. And this is what Elon Musk proved when he took over X. It's about our ability to stay on the air, to talk about things that people might not necessarily want to hear, that are disagreeable, but we still have the right to talk about. And that's what the Democratic Party wanted to take away. That's what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris wanted to take away. That's what Justin Trudeau in this country still wants to take away, and we need to defeat that.
You inspire. I just put out a tweet. You're saying it out loud. I might have said it before, but individual freedom is the greater good, and the sooner the lefty understands that, the better the world will be. But it's, I tell you, when that bullet missed his head, it didn't just save his life; it saved the future of America, and I think it saved the future of the world, because I firmly believe we would have been deeply involved in a kinetic World War III as we speak. David, what I'm going to do, ordinarily I would end it and we'd say our proper goodbyes, but I'm going to head on over to Locals for our after party. You'll send me all of your links that I'll put in the pinned comment so that people can find you. But those watching now, give us all the platforms where we can find you, and then send me those links and I'll pin them.
Okay, you can find me at Stand on Guard, Krayden's Right. You can get me on X, which is www.krayden. Read me on the Post Millennial. I'm on there every day, and on Human Events. And I'm think about covering. You get me on Rumble too, yes. And we need to talk about that next week.
Oh yeah, no, you give me a call. You got my number now. This is you, David Krayden. David Krayden at David Krayden. I don't want to say you're in the bad books at Twitter. It doesn't auto-populate when I put in David Krayden, but that's the link, and I'll put them all in the pinned comment. David, thank you for blackpilling me on Canada. I did not put all of this together until this very stream, although I had all the dots already in my head.
Been a pleasure talking to you, my friend.
Thank you very much. Hold on before you go. Did Davis tell us who was in the thumbnail? Yeah, it's an AI-generated images created with the following parameters. Fat Justin Trudeau, Communist Canada merged, something along those lines. That's the thumbnail. It looks it's like Justin She is what I got in that thumbnail. Dave, okay, we will definitely do this again. Let's talk next week, and we'll talk Rumble and everything else. Thank you immensely for clarifying this.
Okay, thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure. We love your show.
Well, thank you very much. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, let's close that, remove that. Everybody, get on over to Locals if you're going to come there for the after party. It will not be what's the word I'm looking for? Locals. It will not be supporters only. So come on over and we'll have a, I don't know, an AMA chat. Oh, the dog has stopped whining. She is very, very annoying. We are ending it here. So locals one more time. Bada bing, bada boom. And thank you all for being here. Go check out Krayden. He's amazing. Man, he made Canadian politics interesting for almost an hour and a half. Holy crab apples. That was good. Okay, so I'm ending it on YouTube. Sunday night show is on. Barnes is back home. Oh my goodness, I almost forgot the most important update. Barnes is back home. So, booyah. Whether or not he's going to be rested enough for Sunday night, we'll see. I think he will be, because I know that there's nothing more irritating for someone who thrives off constant productivity than being sidelined for a damn near week. So we'll see about Sunday night, but there will be a show, and Barnes is out and back home. So that's the good news. And you'll see me later. I'm going to post a clip afterwards. I'm going to try to get to the computer shop and get a new computer tonight. And that is it. Go. Be well if you're not coming over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com.